Welcome to the second episode of Infamy Speaks. Today we're going to be talking about Target, working at Target, and kind of my experience working there. I worked at Target for 8 months, about 8.5 months. Um, I just officially stopped working there about last week. And I've got quite a lot to say. Um, so yes, this is going to be a long one, um, which is kind of what I intend for most of my podcasts. I like the idea of longer podcasts that you can just turn on the background and kind of chill out with. So this one's definitely going to be a long one and lots of interesting stuff to say. So where else to start than with the start of the job, orientation, right? So once you after you get the interview and you get the job, you are sent an orientation date through an email. Now, I was sent my orientation date, and I am certain that it was my orientation date. I have the email still. Um, so I went in for my orientation, and I get there, and I'm told, "All right, just wait by the seats," because we had like seats up front in the store. So I was like, okay, cool. 15 minutes went by, nothing. 20 minutes went by, nothing. After about half an hour, um, some guy who I would later find out to be like the HR guy would come out and be like, all he said was, "Yeah, so we don't actually have you scheduled for today. Um, can I see the email?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, here it is." And I showed it to him, and it was that date, that time. I was supposed to be there for orientation, and he goes, "Yeah, oh, well, we weren't prepared for this, so yeah, how about let's make let's make an appointment. Let's have you come back next week at the same time, and we'll do the orientation then." I was like, okay, like at the time, like, it was a new job and I needed the job, so I was like, "Oh yeah, no problem. Like, yeah, I'll come back next week. No worries. Easy mistake." Um, but on the inside, I was like, how do you fuck that up? Really? Like, how? I just don't see where something could have gone wrong. Give me a second to focus this camera. If you're listening on Spotify or Anchor or wherever this is, you don't need to wait for me to focus the camera. Well, this is a good time to kind of plug my shit. So, if you don't know, if you're listening to this on Spotify, I have a YouTube channel where you can see the video of this podcast. And here's the video. So go check it out. Infamy Speaks, same as the podcast. I make facial expressions sometimes, and sometimes they're funny. So, anyways, week later, I go to the orientation. It's fine. There are two other people there, and it's orientation. I get my next. I think they only gave me my next week's schedule, right? And I was scheduled, I believe, 4 days, and they just give it to you on a piece of paper, and they're like, "This is your schedule. Just keep this. Don't lose this. There's no other record of you being scheduled these days." Like, okay, cool. Little unofficial, but cool. I'll show up these days. So what happened to me, and what happens to quite a lot of people from the time I was working there, um, is I'd show up on those days and they would have nothing prepared. I'd show up to just a random day that I have on my training schedule, and whoever the leader was at for that day, and At Target, we are like supervisors are called team leaders, and above them would be like the store director. So it's kind of like supervisors, and then the store director would be the manager. So the team leader for that day, usually, not just with me, but usually is just like, oh, you're training today? Oh, okay, what are you training for? And you tell them the type of shift that you're supposed to be working for that, and they then in turn find someone who's able to train you on that thing. They wouldn't have anything prepared. They would just have to go out onto the floor and find someone who knew how to train. And that happened with a lot of people. Um Not just me, and it's like an overwhelming number of people. Like almost all of the people who came in to train had that happen to them. Um and it's just at this point, I'm not shocked. But starting off, I was a little bit worried, like, oh boy, like they don't have their shit together. And I thought it was just me at first, but I'd soon kind of piece it together that this is just how this store works. Now, I can't speak on other targets because, I mean, I've worked at one, I've worked at my target, and it could be different other places, but I know for a fact it's not. I mean, it's a corporate retail job, it's minimum wage, it's kind of the same everywhere. Um, and everyone deals with the same levels of bullshit. My story is probably nothing special, and I know plenty of people have been on the same boat. So, uh, I guess to introduce the job, I have like a little notes thing here on my phone. But I pretty much this is unscripted and I didn't plan most of it or any of it. But I'll start off by talking about the types of shifts that Target entails. Um, First one that I listed was OPU. Now, OPU stands for online pickup, and that's pretty straightforward. People place orders online for in store pickup, and you fulfill that. So we walk around with kind of phone like devices called zebras. We call them zebras. They're really like TCs or like touch computers. Um, but the brand is Zebra that makes them. Um, and so you would get a very loud, obnoxious notification on your Zebra, like a big ding that an order came in, and your team leader would yell out on the walkie, "New order," um, and the order would just tell you what to get in what aisle, and then you bring it to the register and bag it, and someone comes to pick it up. Pretty straightforward, I know. Now, next up would be like the general merchandise shift. Um, for my store was an extremely small Target. Remember to stay hydrated, folks. So my store was an extremely small Target. We only had 3 blocks or 3 sections. Um, each block is kind of separated by what type of section it is. Um, Trying to explain this in a way that like a non-Target worker would understand it, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Um, so for my store, and if you've ever like been in a Target and you've looked up at the aisles and you saw like A21, like that's the aisle number. That A is A block. So each block pertains to the section. A block for my store was kind of like a huge mix. It was all the home stuff. It was all like the medicine, first aid, wellness. It was all of the beauty, uh, bath stuff, like towels, like just everything that has to do with like home goods. Then we had B block, which was kind of half and half between like market and like cleaning. Market being like dry grocery. I'm using only like like common target terms, but they're all pretty straightforward, I believe. Dry grocery being like, like pasta, cereal, chips, things like that. So half of it would be dry grocery, and then the other half was one aisle that was mixed between paper goods and pet supplies. And then another aisle that was all of the cleaning supplies, like Windex and things like that, and laundry detergent. Um, so that was our B block. And then right in the middle was our grocery section for like, like produce, which was in Target is called P Fresh. Uh, then finally we had C block, which was toys, tech, and baby food. I say baby food because like there was also like the diapers, but we only had like one like half section of diapers. It was like one entire length, but it was only on one side because it was kind of the front of the section. Um, and then obviously we had like the clothing section, which was style, and that's pretty much it. Our store was only 3 blocks, A block being the biggest, and it was only 20 aisles, and that's like nothing compared to most Targets. That's amazingly small. I always, anytime a customer would complain about the size of the store, or like they would ask about it, like a second floor, I would just tell them like, hey, this is like pretty much just like a big Walgreens. Like this isn't Target. Um, so yeah, those are the sections that we kind of had, and that was kind of what the general merch shifts were. I'll go into that a little more in a second, but then the other shifts would be style. I don't know what they're called. I don't know what types of shift style has, but anything to do with the style shifts. I never worked in style. Then you would have your P Fresh shifts. The only one I can really think of is MDF, and I did P Fresh a couple times, but again, P Fresh being like produce. Um, then you would have your register shifts, your front end shifts, which are pretty straightforward. You're on the register. And finally, the last one I could think of would be like back room. So like the warehouse guys, the guys who receive the shipments, and they do this thing called like pulling one for ones, which is basically just the store's system kind of tells you what you have sold and what you need to pull from the back room to restock the shelves with. Now, we already get like shipments through the trucks in the morning and the afternoon, and those kind of replenish, but the one for ones are kind of like that extra factor that really keep the shelves stocked. Um, but going back to like the general merchandise shifts, what that would entail is pretty much taking, it would pretty much just include push, zoning, or auditing, right? So that also depends on the time of day. You don't really zone or audit until like the PM shifts, usually, at least in my store, because it was so small. And again, we'd only have like probably like 7 or 8 people working at a time. Like it's a small store. Um, but yeah, pushing would be basically just stocking. So you take items and you put them on the shelf. Stocking. But we call it push. Um, is I guess you are pushing the merchandise. That they took it a little literally there, but then zoning and auditing. Auditing is just keeping a system count of your inventory, pretty much. So if you have a certain section, say you have a C block shift, you're closing C block. The end of the night, once you've zoned, you audit and you basically scan the location of an item and you say how many are there. We pretty much only did audits for anything that had 3 or less items on the shelf. So if it was running low, we would audit that item, and that tells the system to send us more. And that also keeps our like location accuracy higher so that we don't get INFs. I'm throwing a lot of information out there, but kind of just giving an overall rundown of everything. So the INF would be if someone placed an online order and we did not have that item. INF stands for item not found. If we don't have that item, we have to cancel their order, and that drags down our percentage. So that's why auditing helps. And zoning, which I didn't explain, zoning is just straightening out the aisle and making it look neat. You know, bring all the items forward, make everything look nice and clean and organized. Okay, so those are the type of. Oh, and I already explained push. Um, but the way it would work is pretty much you take everything that came from the truck and you push it. Everything came on flow carts. That's not important for anything I'm gonna talk about, so I'm not gonna really explain that. But those are the shift types. Now, Target starts with a seasonal period where you work for 90 days, and then they determine if they are going to keep you on as a permanent worker or not. In that time, I've seen many people get kind of taken off for whatever the reason may be. I'm not going to really make any assumptions here. But yeah, I've seen people who deserve it more than others, let's just say, get taken off. And I mean, it kind of goes without saying that like obviously there's going to be some sort of like favoritism. Um and I got lucky with that. I got kept on. I worked for 8 months, so I got kept on. I was made permanent. Um but yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of people who probably worked harder than others get taken off. It is what it is. That's kind of just, like corporate retail. That's just how it is. But yeah, seasonal was for me was really good. I worked as hard as I possibly could because I knew I needed to keep the job. I worked my ass off. Um, I mean, just a few weeks in, I remember I did a double, so I did an open to close, and just anytime they needed someone, anytime they needed help, I'd obviously volunteer myself. Like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll stay. I'll do an extra day, or I'll do an extra couple of hours. Um, yeah, the one, like I said about the orientation, is I had orientation with two other people, and one of the girls ended up quitting while she was still seasonal because one of the team leaders dropped a water pellet on her foot. So that was I figured I'd throw that in there just because that's pretty funny to me. Um, so there wasn't much competition for me in my group, and the only other person that was seasonal with me also got kept permanent. So that was the group I was with, and the seasonal period. My seasonal period started. I got hired mid October, so I went through the holiday season of Target. I worked on Black Friday, and it was a pandemic, so I opened and one person showed up, which was really funny to me. It did get busier at the end of the day, but that's it. I mean, that was the seasonal period. There's not much to say about it. That was kind of before anything real started happening, and that's already like a third of my entire career there. Um, but yeah, going into the seasonal period, I got trained by a couple of people who were considered to be like the best in the store. Um, so there were high expectations for me, which was fine. I like a challenge. I like having expectations to even live up to. So I didn't mind that, but it eventually got pretty ridiculous, and Yeah, I listed job details and tasks as the next step, but I think I've kind of already gone over what the job was, or at least what all the types of shifts were. Um, I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. Obviously, I mean, any job isn't just gonna be one, two, three straightforward. Um, but yeah, I mean, I was kind of assigned once I got kept permanent. I was kind of assigned like this tech role, so I was like a tech team member. Um, that I don't. We didn't have a tech section. We had, I think we had the one main tech aisle and then another like half aisle of tech. We didn't have any like tech register or phone activation or anything. We sold phone cases and like chargers, and then like some video games. And that was what we called our tech section. Um, that was it. So we didn't really have a tech section, but I guess to keep me on, they just kind of had to give me a title, even though they didn't do that with anyone else. But yeah, they were like, "Yeah, you're tech now." And there was only at the time, I think, one other like tech team member, and I remember he was training me to do tech, and he was like, "Yeah, dude, I don't know what they're talking about. I kind of just push and walk around until someone like notices." There are like tech routines that we're supposed to do, but none of them really apply to our store because we don't have any of the tech. So he was like, I'm pretty much just like a normal, like general merchandise. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be training you on. Um, but yeah, I'm not going to be dropping any names. I don't think. Yeah, no, I'm not going to drop any names. Um, it's not my place. I'm not working there anymore, so it doesn't matter to me anymore. Um, yeah. So as for coworkers, for the most part, aside from the actual leaders, just coworkers on my level. No complaints. No complaints at all. Everyone was super welcoming, super sweet, super nice, and I got along with everyone. Um, some more than others for sure, and the others that I didn't get along with as well, definitely. It started getting better towards the end anyway. So I definitely got along with everyone, and everyone was super nice about like people who were just starting. Um, and like I said, like when the training period was happening, like these these people who were my coworkers like didn't even know that they were going to be training me. They just kind of I just kind of appear in front of them with the team leader, and the team leader was like, "Hey, you're training Justin today," and they were like, "Oh, okay." And then like the team leader would walk away, and they'd be like, "I guess I'm training today. Uh, what do you know so far?" And I'd be like, "Nothing. It's my first day." And they'd be like, "Oh, okay. I guess we'll start with pushing." Like no one knew what to do. There was no coordination. There was no communication. Yeah. So they were cool about it. Like the coworkers were cool about it. Um, so they were kind of just we're all in the same boat really. Um, so yeah, that was it. As for like anything that stands out before I get into like the real drama, um, there's not a whole lot. I mean, you'll argue with customers or guests, as you're supposed to call them, when you work there. Lots of customer arguments, lots of weird things I saw by customers. Like I saw like one lady like walking around with like a bottle of detergent on her head. Like she wasn't carrying it. She was gonna buy it, but instead of carrying it, she just put it on her head and started walking around the store. That was weird. Um, and then you get like the kids who come in and knock everything over and ruin everything. And I mean, there's plenty of stories I have. I don't know if they pertain to like the working at Target like expose that I'm going for. It's not really doesn't fit in. I could go on about them. Like there was one dude who came to like he came to our store right in the morning as we were getting our P Fresh shipment, and he tried stealing a bunch of shit off of the pallet. and the our like security leader or head of security um ran out there and like deterred him, but in the process, like it started like a big fist fight, and she stole his bike. So for a while, we just had this random dude's bike in our back room, and she was like, "Well, he's got to come get it back at some point, so that's when we'll call the police." And I'm like, "You're head of security. You are the police, no? Like, are you? I mean, you're not, but you're as close as it really gets. The cops aren't coming here. The guy's gone. He's been gone. He didn't successfully steal anything. So we have his bike. We're the criminals." Um, yeah, we just had some guy's bike in our back room for a while. And there was plenty that happened with the store, shit like that. But yeah, like I said, I don't think it's that important to mention. Um, there will probably be a separate podcast where I talk about like just the funnier side of Target. Um, not on maybe not on this channel or on this podcast, but I'm sure it'll come up at some point. Probably when I'm doing a podcast with one of my friends. Um, so that's it for now. I guess we'll move on to like the actual drama. Um, so it all kind of started with a situation regarding the back room. So we needed a new back room closer because ours got promoted. She became a team leader and went to a different store. So they made this a friend of mine the back room closer, and that was cool. Our SD, our store director, came up to me and was like, "Hey, like, I'm thinking of creating a new shift. Like, I'm thinking of creating this like we're gonna call it like fill to need." And like, first off, I'm pretty sure that was a shift already, but whatever. Told me we're gonna create this new shift, and I think that you should be the one to work it. It's going to be a 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, weekends off, set schedule, and you're gonna be in the back room helping this guy. Um, you're gonna be in the back room helping him, and you're gonna help pull the 1-for-ones, and then you're gonna push the 1-for-ones, and then you're gonna help backstock at the end of the night. Backstocking was anything that anything that we pulled or like we got in a shipment that didn't fit on the shelves, like there were too many on the shelves already, came back to the back room as backstock. So that's what we have too many of. So we scan it and put it in a location in the back room to be pulled at a later date when we have space. So that's what backstock was. Um, so he told me you're gonna be helping in the back room. You're gonna backstock. You're gonna pull 1-for-ones. So you're gonna push them, and you're going to do the dumpsters at the end of the night. You're gonna clear out the bale. Um, if you don't know, like a bale is like a compactor for like cardboard. Um, basic backroom duties. Basically, tell me you're like the secondary backroom person. Um, and you've got this set schedule, and I chose you for this, and this was my decision. And he specifically said, "I'm going to talk to your leaders about this, and I'm going to let them know what I'm going to have you doing." I was like, "Cool, sounds good to me. I'll take it. I'd love a set schedule, especially weekends off every week. That sounds great." Sometimes I hit the mic. I'm sorry. um, so that was the beginning of the end, really. Um, so I had a specific team leader who very much didn't like me. Um, and it was obvious, and it was obvious to everyone, not just me. She didn't like me. I think mainly because she was like the back room team leader, and she saw that that's kind of where I wanted to be. Like that's like if I had a goal of moving up, like that's the job I'd want. And I guess she kind of saw that as like a threat because I mean, for being honest here, she sucked at her job. She didn't do any work. She didn't work at all. Um, and she knew that, and it's been years of people like trying to get her fired and failing to get her fired. Um, and she kind of saw me as I guess that threat. So she definitely had a problem with me being back there. Um, so a couple weeks go by, and she decides that I am no longer well. The thing that triggered before I get into that, I'll say there was one night I closed the back room alone. Uh, Instead of being the 1 to 9, I was the back room closer that day because the usual closer called out. So that back room close did not go smoothly, because the opener did not open it well at all. Because she was actually also new, uh, at least at being back room. She actually trained me when I first started there, but she was new at the back room, and it was a very busy day in the morning. So I was not handed a very good. Hit it again. I was not handed a very good back room, um, which is not at her fault at all. She did what she could, and there's nothing more she could have really done. She was also alone. Um, so yeah, I closed the back room. It wasn't great, and from there, this specific leader decided that I should no longer be near the back room. Um, she said it was my incompetence that led to the back room being that way. And I told her like no, like it was clearly a bad day. Like all of this happened, and the opener did this, and that, and she wasn't able to do this or that. And this team leader was like, "No, you're lying. All of that's false. I'll call her in here." And I was like, "Okay, call her in here." So the back room opener for that day came into the room and was like, "No, like it was a bad it was a bad open. There was a lot going on. Like I told you this that day. Like it was not gonna be good." Um, so just straight up caught lying. Um, and team leader was like, "Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I was unaware." Um, so she moves on to look at me and tell me that I am not a backroom member, or I am not in the back room. I have never been in the back room, and that our store director has never placed me there and has never talked to me about any backroom position or opportunity or whatever you want to call it. Um, there was absolutely no communication. The store director, I know for a fact, did communicate to the other leaders that this is what was happening because all the other leaders agreed with me on this. Um, so she decided that she no longer really wanted me back there, but it wasn't really up to her. I mean, HR is scheduling me, and the store director wants me there. Um, she is the backroom team lead though, so it posed some hiccups. Um, a lot started going on between then, and basically she started trying to give me write ups for just any little like. I swear it would be like June, let's say. I mean that's now, but let's say it's June, and she would be like, "Oh, you were 3 minutes late on April 4th. Like, we're gonna have to write you up for that." And she'd start looking for any little thing to find to write me up on. She was trying to get me out, and at some point I was just like, listen, you can't keep going that far back. You can't just like, I see your computer. You can't just go on my schedule and search back months and months to find any little thing to try to get me in trouble on. Like, it's not like I'm not gonna accept these write ups if that's how we're gonna play this. Um, and also it was a pandemic at the time. Like, buses weren't running as well as they. I mean, it still is a pandemic. Let me let me correct that first. But it was like the height of the pandemic. October isn't really the height, but it was close enough to the start. It was the same year, 2020. Um, yeah, buses weren't really running, and no one really wanted to be there. Like, you're endangering yourself to work at Target. Like, you're making minimum wage. But to be fair, my specific story and my store aside, Target as a company, I believe, handled it pretty well, like compensation wise, because I know before I started working there for like 6 months straight, I think it was like everyone was getting hazard pay, like time and a half for working during a pandemic. And then, like, when I started working there, I think it was two separate times Target sent every worker $500, like a bonus $500 on a check for working during a pandemic, which honestly, that's like the most I've ever gotten from any place I've worked at. Like, that's like, they could have just as easily just been like, sorry, sucks to suck, like, you gotta work. Um, so props where props are due. But anyways, that was kind of like the that leader situation where she didn't want me back there, and that was my job. That was like the thing that I was assigned to do, and just started getting worse and worse. And she started giving me write ups, and I started talking to another team leader who worked there, and that team lead, she was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be real with you. Like, I try to do what you're doing. First of all, I what I was doing was I went to the store director to talk to him and be like, hey, this team leader doesn't fucking do anything. She sucks. She's like super mean to everyone. She doesn't do her work. She sits in the office on FaceTime with her friends. Like, she's awful. And I know she's awful. I know plenty of people have complained. And this is what happened that one day. And I went through all of it. I went straight to the store director, and he was like, oh, okay, I'll look into it. I'll ask your peers. He never did. He never looked into it. He never asked my peers. He never did any of that shit. So I started talking to one of the other team leads, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be real with you. Like, I'm on a final right now. Like, as in a final warning. Before termination." She's like, "Yeah, I'm on a final right now because I went to the store director to complain about this team leader, and he called me like disrespectful, and he put me on a final. So you have to be very careful. You have to watch your words." And she told me this before I went in to talk to him, so I knew kind of how to handle it more. But as I was on my way to talk to him, she like stopped me and like told me all this, and it was like, I don't know what this one team leader has over everyone else in the company, but she's unfireable and everyone is scared of her. I don't know, and maybe it's like a seniority thing. I know she's worked with Target for like 7 years, something like that. Um, Maybe it's that, I'm not sure. Everyone else at my store was pretty new. Um, like, there was the one team lead she's been a team lead for like a couple of months. There's another one who's been a team lead for like a year. Like, no one was really at the height that she was with like the 6 or 7 years. Um, so yeah, I went straight to the store director, and nothing happened pretty much. And the other team leader was like, "Yeah, I did the same thing, and I got in trouble for it. I got a final." Um, and it resulted in a lot of like scheduling drama where my hours would start getting cut. Um, and I was getting write ups, and she pretty much just anything she could do to have me not be in the back room. Well, next thing you know, the back room closer quits. And I'm the only one in the store who knows how to close the back room. Um, I mean, apart from the person who usually opens it, but they have to open it. So I'm the only one they've got left, and I'd turn just like that. All of a sudden, they start kissing my ass, and they need me to close the back room every day on a whim. So I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll take like the super nice treatment of being able to work in peace, and it's for something that I wanted to do anyway. I would like, I'd rather be in the back room than working regular shifts, and I do probably a week or two closing the back room before they have me start training someone to take my spot in the back room. Someone who already worked there too. They didn't even like hire someone else to be a back room. It's not like they just had me until they found someone. They could have just left me in the back room to close. No, they took someone who generally always closed A block. And they were just like, we're going to teach you to do back room. She didn't even want to do it. So that was just to get me back out of the back room. Um, and yeah, this one team leader has had so many complaints on her, and there's so much more I could talk about. I just like this podcast is it's long enough already, and so I'm trying to get to the point. Um, she was terrible at her job. She didn't do her job. She was super disrespectful, and she wanted things a certain way, and she wanted me out. So I start training this new girl to take my spot, which is fine. Whatever. I have no problems with the girl. Like she obviously didn't do anything. Um, but yeah, after a couple months, couple more months, I should say. Yeah, I was on a final. Um, I I I denied the first two finals. I think they tried giving me a final for things that happened before my initial write ups. So I'm saying if you're gonna give me a final, it has to be something I did recently, right? Like you can't give me a warning and then give me a final warning for something that happened before the initial warning, right? Because like if I didn't have any warning, how could I have prevented it, right? Like that it's pretty straightforward. Um, so yeah, I ended up being late once, and I was put on a final. Because again, they were trying to get me out of there, and I said, "Fuck it." It kind of lined up perfectly. I got a new job. I start in a week or so, a week or two. I start a new job at this point, not at that point, but at this point, it's about 2 weeks till I start a new job. So I was like, "Oh, you're gonna put me on a final?" And it was her to put me on the final. So she gave me the final, and she was like, "Oh, that's it. Do you have any other questions?" And I looked at her, and I was like, "Yeah. Do I put in my 2 weeks with you or with HR?" And the look on her face was absolutely priceless because she's been trying to fire me for so long, trying to get me out, and now I'm quitting before they can fire me. So she was astonished and clearly upset. Um, and yeah, so I quit. I put in my 2 weeks, and I ended up being late again during my 2 weeks. So they fired me on my third to last shift. Yeah, they still fired me while I already submitted my resignation and was 3 shifts away from being out of there permanently. When I tell you that Target is one of the pettiest places I've fucking worked at, holy shit. There's so much like saying it all. Oh, I just keep it in the fucking mic. I just can't stop. It's just I probably shouldn't sit so fucking close to it. Um, but yeah, after saying it all out loud, it kind of seems like nothing. Because I know I'm missing so much. I probably should have taken better notes. Um, but yeah, a lot happened and a lot has gone on. I mean, it was 8 months of shit. but that's kind of like the basic summary of it. If you work at Target, not even like that store specifically, if you work at Target and you want to talk to me about Target shit, hit me up. If there's any details I missed, I could tell you, I could fill you in, I could spill the tea. Um, but that's kind of all I have for now. Um, I don't know why I spent the first half of this just kind of going over like what Target is and what kind of shit it was all basically about like the back room and me being like exiled from it. I was basically blackballed by Target, which was weird. But yeah, that's kind of all I have. A lot more, like I said, I've said the same thing like 16 times, but a lot more has happened. I got fired right before I was my last day. Um, and yeah, it was just a bunch of bullshit, and it seems like nothing when I say it out loud, but it was such like a sluggish experience, and it just took forever, and just a lot of bullshit for very little payoff for anybody. No one really got anything out of it. Um, but yeah, that was my experience at Target or working at Target. It was pretty shit. Um, the job itself, super easy. The job itself is super easy. You're getting paid for really, you're putting things on shelves all day. And if you're not doing that, you're on a register all day. And if you're not doing that, then you get the back room shift, which is actually a little difficult. Um, but it's still all very easy. Even the back room shifts, like it's still very easy shit. And your coworkers, or at least mine, were awesome. There was no complaints there except for the team leader. It was actually two team leaders that I had a problem with. One was like friends with the main one I was talking about, and she also did her part to kind of like they like kind of teamed up against me. It was weird. They formed like this alliance. Um, but yeah, yeah, that was Target. Job is super easy, but the bullshit that I went through, I'm so glad it's over. And when I was told I was fired, I was told by luckily not by this one team leader. I was told by this guy who I got along with pretty well, and we spent like 10 minutes laughing about it in the office. He was just like, "Yeah, bro, you're getting fired, like, dude. Like, I know you quit, but you're getting fired. So you gotta get the fuck out." Um, yeah, it was pretty funny in the moment. He was like, "Bro, you knew you were getting fired. You were late. Why'd you come in?" And I was like, "I wanted to see what happened." Um, so yeah, that was Target. I hope you enjoyed listening. Um, if I think of anything else, well, I'm not gonna include it because it's a podcast and it will be uploaded by then. So sucks to suck. Stay on the lookout. Stay tuned for other things to come, and hopefully you enjoy it. I'll see you next time. I forgot to hit stop. It's kind of I'm gonna pretend like that didn't happen, and I'm gonna end it now. So thanks.